Hello, this is Russ Tanner from Global Skywatch, and this is July 8th, 2013, and this is our Monday night live conference where everyone is invited to participate and join us in talking about geoengineering, chemtrails, and subjects related to keeping your health in check and being able to be a part of the solution in this massive problem that we have. I'm going to quickly go through our agenda, and then we're going to talk to our special guest tonight, Richard Sachs, who is actually co-host with me on the Geoengineering Watch radio that plays on Saturday at ucy.tv. Just look for Geoengineering Watch radio there, and it plays at 12 noon on Saturdays, 3 at Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. First, let's go through our agenda real quick and cover the things that we need to talk about related to our current projects. I want to encourage everybody, as I often and always say, that we have end geoengineering bumper stickers and yard signs. I know I say this every week, but it's really important. If we're going to reach out beyond our group of people, we need to let more and more people know about this. I'm receiving a little bit more email on my end geoengineering email box, which shows me that it's working. People have contacted me who first heard about this geoengineering because they saw an end geoengineering yard sign. So they do work. You can also use them as protest signs, which they did. I believe I have pictures of the San Francisco protest in which they were using them in the protest. So keep them on hand. You can put them in a window. You can use them in a protest. You can put them in your front yard. You can do all of the above. Switch them around. We also have Global Skywatch bumper stickers. I've got 3 vehicles in the driveway, and all of them have geoengineering bumper stickers on them. So everywhere I drive, people are able to see this website and be exposed to this subject. So it's a very easy way to do this. So please do that. I also want to draw everybody's attention to the global events calendar. If you go to globalskywatch.com, click the global events calendar at the top, and you can see a list of upcoming events that are related to geoengineering. We keep a centralized list, so it's easy for people to look up things that are going on. If you have an event, please make sure you enter it into the calendar, because I actively promote those very heavily among our group. We have a large group that just passed 9,000 members on Facebook. Very large group that's dedicated to chemtrails and geoengineering. And we have 200 people waiting to join. Actually, 222, I just checked a little while ago, people that are in the queue waiting to join. So we're going to have over 9,300 members. We're growing at a rate of, right now, about 100 new members a day. We need 1,000 new members a day if we're going to put an end to this. So we need these bumper stickers, yard signs out there, or anything that you can do to let everybody else know about this subject. Not too much else to go on the agenda. Just want to let everybody know we will have a question and answer session afterward. And I do want to let everybody know that your call-in number, if you want to call in in about 45 minutes and ask Richard Sachs any questions about the subject tonight, you can call 559-726-1300, and your access code is 156230. One more time, it's 559-726-1300, and your access code is 156230. And once you are in the call system, you just press *6 and you will be added to the question and answer queue, and we'll get to you one by one and have those let you ask your questions of Richard. If you want to see us on the web, go to globalskywatch.com/live, and there we have all the information where you can link to the live stream, which we actually are streaming this on live stream. You can watch it on any computer or any device. And you can also see the call-in numbers there. There's also international. There's about a dozen or over a dozen international phone numbers that you can use to also call in. So if you're in another country and you want to call in and ask Richard a question, you are more than welcome to do that. So let me get right down to it. I want to introduce tonight Richard Sachs is a co-host along with me on the Geoengineering Watch radio on Saturdays, as I mentioned just a minute ago. Let me read his bio so you know who he is. He has been a holistic health researcher and investigator since 1965. He has also been involved in organic agriculture since about that time and was one of the first students in America of the great horticultural genius Alan Chadwick, who himself a student of Rudolf Steiner before coming to America in the 60s. Richard has been studying cycles of the Earth since about 1968 when he met Don Weaver, co-author of The Survival of Civilization, that dealt with ice ages, soil mineral content, atmospheric CO2, the global weather patterns, and so on. Since that time, Richard has delved deeper into the aspects of holistic health, of people, other living creatures, and of the planet. He himself has also done many years of investigation into the economic and political power structure that now rules America and much of the world. Richard brings to the show the perspective of a healer, offering a clear perspective of what is going on around us and our own tremendous forgotten power for awareness and healing both of ourselves on every level and of the planet. He resides in Arizona. Welcome. Thank you for being with us, Richard.
Thanks, Russ. It's really a pleasure to be here. I appreciate everybody inviting me. So we'll try to bring up some interesting things tonight.
Well, good. I hope we do. I love to make these, have these shows be packed with good and useful information. They are archived and eventually listened to by thousands of people. Our we've had some very, very popular shows in the past, and the information we've had people like Kelly, who's the founder of the protests in San Francisco, and she helps coordinate those protests that are happening now bi-monthly in San Francisco. Kelly Dougherty. We've also had George Barnes, who is the founder of Skyder Alert, on here. We've had Clifford Carnicom, Dane Wigington, Will Thomas, and tonight we have Richard Sachs, who's going to share information regarding health, superfoods, and tonic herbs. But before we get started, Richard, you and I talked that we're going to spend about the first 10 minutes or so talking about some fundamental information about health. And I want everybody to just listen to the fundamentals, which are very important. And Richard wanted to make sure to get these out to you because these things are fundamental to health. And after that, we're going to quickly delve in and get into a bunch of information about superfoods and tonic herbs to help keep you healthy despite the toxic metals that are being sprayed on us 24 hours a day in most places. And so, Richard, go ahead and tell us about the fundamentals that you think people need to follow in order to maintain their health.
Okay, yeah, well, I think the place to start for me would be, there's so much I want to say at once. I'm going to try to separate it out here so it's more or less coherent, and then we can come back to this original stuff later in the discussion as we're talking about the herbs and the superfoods. And my concern was just that I don't want people to take natural substances like herbs and superfoods and think that they're taking them like an allopathic medicine, but just in a natural form. That's not the mentality that leads to good health, in my opinion. It has to be an overview of an entire lifestyle, which determines not only how long you live, but the quality of life, which is, in my mind, much more important. So I started this as many other healing people do because my health was so bad long ago in the 60s, 1960s. And I was being treated by some of the best doctors in the world, supposedly, and they were destroying me, killing me slowly, or actually not so slowly at the time. And so, they were recommending the great therapies of surgery and really heavy toxic chemicals called pharmaceutical drugs. And naturally, my body didn't appreciate that. It's not designed that way. The body has been more or less working on the same design for a really long time. It knows nothing about toxic chemicals like drugs or poisons in your food or the water or the air or what they're spraying in chemtrails, geoengineering. A body is designed to work with nature. So that's been really my whole approach. I wanted to delve as deeply as I could into understanding that, to see what produces disease, what produces good health, what can you do for it in a very unnatural environment, and what are the steps to reverse aging, so-called aging, which I no longer really believe in at all, and what can you do to get rid of chronic diseases, and in the process, really, you almost eliminate all of the acute sicknesses at the same time. So I was really interested in that because I had a lot of things I wanted to accomplish during the time that I'm living in this body, and I thought I could do a lot better job if I'm not dealing with diseases. So that was my approach to the whole thing. And in the 1990s, when I first got really conversant with geoengineering and chemtrails, I realized that you can do everything possible for your lifestyle in terms of organic food and really good quality water and all the right kinds of exercise and sunlight exposure and grounding, which is critically important, all these different things. And you can't go out and very easily find organic air. You're still breathing this really toxic garbage, and we're finding out more and more toxins that are in it all the time. And that doesn't go with a health program. So that's my concern. Well, that's one of my concerns about geoengineering, is that it prevents our reaching our health potential. But I'm also very involved in organic agriculture. And geoengineering or chemtrails has the potential, as everybody here knows, to completely destroy organic agriculture all over the world, which kind of bothers me a lot. So um, my uh, my interest tends to be in how can we stop it once we know that it's absolutely deadly dangerous to the entire planet and everyone's life. Um, how can we get it stopped? And my main focus there has become, I'm aware of about at least 20 other major parallel agendas working against, on a totally destructive note against humanity and the earth. And the same people I have found are behind all of them. And so, and many of these have the possibility of destroying life on Earth, not just geoengineering. And so, in order to stop the geoengineering, those people have to be stopped. And in order for us to do a good job of attempting to do that, hopefully succeeding, we need to be operating at super high potential, near 100% of our capacity, because the people who are doing these things on purpose are not doing them by mistake. The ones at the very top levels are super intelligent. I mean, they're also really stupid because they don't realize that when you do very nasty things to other people, it comes back on you. That's just a law of nature. It has nothing to do with religions. It's from way older than that. And they don't know about that. But as far as the cleverness with which they plan and carry out their destruction, their intelligence is very high. And if we're going to have any chance to actually get to the point of stopping what they're doing, we're going to need every possible facility and ability that we have. And without health, it's virtually impossible to access those. So that's how those interests fit together for me. And Russ asked me to talk about super herbs or superfoods and tonic herbs, which I will. And so I just wanted to put those in perspective. They're just one part of a complete health program. They are not some kind of natural version of allopathic drugs that are going to cure everything. They're just a way to boost nutrition, because right now, for a lot of interesting reasons, and I'm going to present this stuff as fast as I can because there's a lot of material here that's practical. And I want you to understand that the reason it's hard to get adequate nutrition without these things is because the soil worldwide right now is very low in minerals, and the magnetic field of the planet is also at a very, very low stage, which is not good for health. And so when you put those things together with the pollution, the pesticides, the GMO contamination, all these other things, we need to boost our sources of nutrition any possible way we can. So I would say that on the food side, which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about some other time, the body was only designed to eat certain kinds of food. They all have to be absolutely organic. There's just no question about that. Organic is like the minimum standard. And I would say for anybody interested in actually recovering or maintaining their health, basically you can't eat anything that's not organically grown, because what that means is if you're not, you're eating poison, and that's not a good idea. So getting rid of all the euphemisms, fancy language, even technical language, and making things simple and clear, calling them what they are, gives you a much better handle on making your decisions. And I would say along that line with food, if it's not at least organically grown, and there are ways to get higher than that, then it's not edible. And as soon as we start thinking that way, the change in consumer demand will force the food outlets to carry almost exclusively organic food, which is what we need to have happen. And at that point, the price of organic food will also drop, which I think is very important. So I look at these supplements, which are the herbs and the superfoods, as a way to boost an otherwise really carefully and completely put together health program, of which there are a lot of important facets, everything from sun exposure to exercise to what you're basically eating and not eating and drinking. Those things are indispensable. You cannot do it just with herbs and superfoods. Now, the way that I got into them is that I spent about 20 years, one of the later 20-year sections of my health investigations, formulating protocols for supplements. And I'm talking about the kind of supplements that you buy in the store in capsules. And I took those and I heavily relied on them for at least 20 years. And I also got involved in making people aware of and fighting against restrictions and banning of supplements, which you know that supplements are good for you because the governments of the Western world are trying to make them completely unavailable. And that's about the strongest quality endorsement that you could possibly ask for, because the people at the top level of all the governments and above that, they understand nutrition, they understand health, they know what geoengineering is doing to us. It's not a mistake. It's an intentional plan, and there's a lot behind that that we need to understand. So I spent time fighting against Codex Alimentarius, which is a worldwide plan to make nutrition impossible to get, which is very, very well coordinated. And it's very far along at this point. It's farther in Europe than it is in the US, where it's already impossible to get many supplements. But I made a transition into herbs and superfoods. I'm sorry, I'm over 10 minutes. I'm talking as fast as I can.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
But this does tie together. And I made a transition from health food store supplements to herbs and superfoods because it just struck me one time when I was taking all these vitamins and minerals and everything else that there were ingredients in there that I really didn't feel like taking. And once I started looking at that, I started uncovering more and more, and I realized that even the capsule, even a veggie cap, if it doesn't say organic veggie cap, it's probably full of GMOs. And, a lot of that comes from corn and other sources, gelatin, other places that they make it from. Even if it comes from beef gelatin, if it's animals that have eaten GMO corn, you get the DNA. And in order to stay in good shape and not have some mysterious disease, you have to be wide awake in the environment that we're in right now. And you can't be lazy looking at details. And I'm sorry it's like that. I'd like life to just be really, really easy and smooth and happy. But we're intentionally being attacked on all these levels. These are not mistakes of science. Congress is not doing what they're doing because they're a bunch of idiots. This is all absolutely delicately planned and coordinated. And once you get aware of that, it changes everything about your perception. So when I decided I didn't want to be a guinea pig eating magnesium stearate to make the vitamins flow better and a long list of all this garbage, I thought, well, how am I going to do that? And I had this theme of wanting to do things in harmony with nature. So the way I decided to experiment with that is I started getting into looking for plant sources of nutrients that were much higher than organically grown food could provide. So, in other words, if you have a tomato plant in an organic farm, if they're not dousing it with rock dust and really know what they're doing to remineralize the soil, because of the position that we're in regards to glacial cycles right now, the mineral content of the soils is very low worldwide. So if they don't compensate for that, which they could do with rock dust, then that means that tomato has a fraction of the nutrition that it should have, even if it's great, clean, and organic. You should still buy it instead of a chemical tomato, but it's still missing some things that you need in order to find out what your capacity really is. And I'm talking about physical and mental, what you need if you want to do something like fight geoengineering. So where I found that to exist was in this category of plants that is able to grow in very, very tough environments where it's almost impossible for many plants to survive. And they're so strong that, they can grow in places that are almost all rock, that are just really inhospitable. And in the midst of that, with tremendous vitality, they concentrate all of these nutrition elements, nutrients, minerals, other things that you would never find in a regular farm crop of any kind, even organic. So that got me into the superfoods and the tonic herbs. And what tonic herbs means There are different kinds of herbs, for example, medicinal herbs, ones that you can only take for a short time and then you have to have a break because they're too powerful to take all the time in a certain way. The tonic herbs, which they came from a lot of places. Ayurvedic have them, and the Chinese herbalists have them, and the Japanese have them. But the main source that I drew from was called the Taoist tonic herbs, and it came from the original Oriental philosophy of Taoism, which is really quite beautiful. And the Tao Te Ching is a book that you can see to learn a little bit more detail about that. And these Taoist tonic herbs are ones that are food, but they have these incredible properties that I just described. And so if you add them to your organic food every day, and you also observe other things, moving towards more raw food in your diet, which is really important because the body was designed to process raw food. That's another whole discussion sometime. And sunlight exposure, you know that if the system of medicine is telling you that the sun is your enemy and causes horrible diseases, that it must be really good for you. And that turns out to be true. So you need sunlight exposure, build up to it slowly if you're not used to it. And in your eyes, you need it. That's why they're getting everybody in dark glasses. And you need to start learning to decipher the reality from what everybody's programmed with, and very often it's just the opposite. So if you're doing those things and you add tonic herbs to, organically grown or clean wild tonic herbs to your food, as much raw the food as you possibly can, then your vitality goes up. And what I found in my own experimenting, which with tonic herbs really is only like the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years at the most, which is a very tiny part of my whole research, that what I found is my energy is really high and I have the better effects than when I was taking about 30 different regular supplements a day. And so for just an example of that, and I'll go through a list to give you examples, but a good example is I was taking a lot of vitamin C when I was taking regular supplements. I knew all about the work of different people had done on vitamin C. And so I was taking many grams of it per day. And I know that it's been used in even much higher doses when they're fighting chronic diseases. But it was produced in a factory. And that even if it had some natural things in it, that really bothered me because it's the life force and the energy in the food that you're eating that is as important or more important than the identifiable nutrients. And that's really important to understand that. So instead of vitamin C in a capsule, I eat acerola berry or rose hips powder or things like that that have the super powerful vitamin C, but they've got everything that nature put with it to make it work better. And the effect is much, much more powerful. So that's the approach I take with all the supplements now, in addition to the other parts of the dietary and health routine elements. So Russ, I guess, thought that it would be nice for me to give you some examples of tonic herbs and superfoods and how they're used.
Oh,
And what,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's people are very interested. What are these superfoods?
okay,
How will they affect them? And what are the tonic herbs? And how will they help them? Because
yeah,
people are looking for energy. People are tired out. People are, and believe me as much as anybody, I suffer from these, and I am managing myself pretty well, keeping myself functional. But if I
hmm,
didn't know what I was doing, I would be in big trouble. So I want to
yeah, okay,
pack this hour with information of what people can do to help themselves. You've given a good foundation, um, which is a vital for accomplishing this. But yeah, absolutely, superfoods, tonic herbs.
okay.
Go ahead and
Uh,
roll with it.
yeah, a couple of things about all of them. First of all, the economics of it. If you get them in bulk, as a dried powder mostly. There's a really great place that I like called Mountain Rose Herbs, and you can order online. The prices are good. They're not. Nobody's paying me anything to recommend anybody. In fact, people have offered to, put me into MLM systems and stuff like that and talk about their products. I will not do it. I won't make any money from a product, um, of a health food product, because I want to be unbiased. And so Mountain Rose Herbs is a really great source. They have virtually everything that I'm going to talk about is available there, and they'll ship it to your door wherever you live. It's great and it's organic. The other thing is that there are some wonderful sources of information on tonic herbs and superfoods that I need to tell you about just for a minute. Uh, just the first three people that come to my mind that are super experts in this area, and they have all kinds of free video talks on YouTube that you can get anytime you want to, just like sitting in front of them and listening. One of them is David Wolf, who I consider incredibly brilliant and is doing great service for the whole world. Two other people that he also works with a lot. One is named Truth, like the word truth, Calkins, Calkins, and the last one is an older herbal master named Ron Teeguarden, spelled Teeguarden. And these guys are great, and you can listen to them whenever you want to. And they know probably 100 times about this subject more than I do. So I'm just going to share with you what I've been able to pick up in a few years. And I'm actually doing this. I'm eating these things every day. And so, I'm telling you what I'm actually doing. So I'm going to start with a few here. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tonic herbs that are great. And as David Wolf says frequently, all you need to know is maybe 10 of them. And you don't need anything else. I'm going to tell you more than that. And then if you are interested in one, my suggestion is don't just take what I'm saying, go investigate it. Listen to these three people that I told you about, get their books if you can. Do your research on YouTube, which is a really easy way to learn all kinds of stuff, and find your own information. But I'm just going to introduce you to the possibilities of what they can do. Now, the first one that I already mentioned, which I use to replace taking vitamin C. I haven't taken any vitamin C for a long time now, and I used to take, sometimes like 8 or 10 grams a day, which is a lot. And the first herb that I use for that is acerola berries, and that's spelled Acerola. I'm going to talk fast because I don't know if we'll get very far on this list, but I'll get as far as I can, and we might be able to do some more at another time. So acerola berries, that's an evergreen tropical tree. It can even grow in South Florida and lower parts of Texas. Beautiful tree with berries on it that look like cherries. It's called Barbados cherry also for that reason. And it's very high in vitamin C, but also with all kinds of other nutrients packed together. That's the way nature always does it. And when you have the mentality of isolating these things, looking for supposedly the active ingredient, you're always making a big mistake, in my opinion. Because if you find the active ingredient, it's not even going to act the same without the other stuff that's supposed to be with it. And that's what took me in this direction. So acerola berries are great. Aloe vera is another herb that I find really useful. It's a good thing for everybody to be growing, even in their house if they need to, or outside in containers. It has a big leaf that you've probably seen in pictures. It's got kind of spiny edges on it. It's long, like a kind of a tapering sword shape. And if you break it, if you take a leaf off, which will not kill the plant, you leave lots of leaves on the plant, and you take that, and the inside gel is really great for burns and other injuries like that. And you can get it as a dried powder for a supplement from the same source I told you before, Mountain Rose Herbs. So very great plant to have around in your house. Ashwagandha root, I'm kind of going semi-alphabetical here to maybe make it easier. And then we can do questions about these if you want to. Ashwagandha root has been used in India for thousands of years. It's available now in a convenient powder, just like the others. It's called adaptogenic, and you notice the word adapt in there, and genic means to begin. So what it does is it helps your body adapt to stresses. It's very powerful for that. It's good rejuvenating herb. It fights fatigue, and it's a great antioxidant. So very valuable powder. I take that every day. I take most of these every day, actually. Astragalus, or astragalus, I guess you need to say accurately. That's also a great herb that's been used for an extremely long time. It's good for sugar balance. It's supposedly fairly well known for heart support and immune system support. Really powerful herb. I take that all the time too. Cayenne pepper you've heard of, but organic, fresh cayenne powder is described as having benefits for the heart and possible application for helping hair, skin, and nails and things like that. In fact, people take cayenne powder, mix it with oils, and let it ferment for about a month in a jar. And then they smear that, and you've got to be really careful handling this, because if you put your hand in it and then you touch your eye or something, you're going to really hurt yourself. So you be very careful handling cayenne. But they put this fermented oil paste made out of cayenne on their heads, and it's supposedly really great externally for hair, and can minimize hair loss and make your hair more healthy. So it's pretty interesting herb, and it's good for, everybody says it's good for heart. The people in the tropics actually eat it fresh, like a fruit, even though it's incredibly hot. Chaga, C-H-A-G-A, is one of David Wolf's absolute favorite mushrooms, and it's a kind of mushroom. It's not the kind that grows when the grass is wet. You know, it grows on dead trees, which is a whole other category of health benefiting mushrooms. And chaga is one of those. It can, if you're ever walking in the forest where there's dead trees, you can see these big growths coming out of the side of the rotting wood, and some of those are medicinal mushrooms, and chaga is one of those. It's known for life extension, increasing life force. David Wolf wrote an entire book just about chaga mushrooms called Chaga, that's highly recommended, and he calls it food for the immune system. And it comes in a convenient powder. I use that every day as well. Chased berries I haven't used because that's primarily for women, but it's supposed to be very good for menstrual pain and all kinds of related problems, and breast pain and problems, hormone imbalances, menopause issues, and fertility, skin issues like acne, which sometimes come from hormone imbalances, and PMS. So, and that's a really beautiful plant. It's got these tall blue flowers on it, and it grows in some parts of the U.S. as well, but that's available also as a dried herb. Marcus Rothkranz, that's another guy I forgot to mention. Marcus Rothkranz is a great health teacher. I recommend that people watch his videos. There's a lot of those online. They're all free. And he's written some really good books about health restoration, longevity, youth, and all kinds of great subjects. So he's a very inspiring teacher. I recommend everybody get in touch with his material, Rothkranz, Marcus, M-A-R-K-U-S. Eleuthero root, and we'll just see how far we get on this list here.
I'll tell you what, while we're waiting here, Richard, I'm going to let people start lining up to ask you questions. So if you have a question for Richard, I'm going to enable the Q&A queue.
Q&A session started.
And there it is. If you call into the call-in number, it's 559-726-1300. And the access code is 156230. If you missed that phone number, you can go to globalskywatch.com/live, and the phone number is there. There's also about 15 international phone numbers you can call from other countries as well. When you call into the console, press *6, and you will be entered into the question and answer queue so that you can ask Richard a question. So please call in, line up, press *6 so you can get into the Q&A queue and ask Richard any question you have. He's willing to listen to anything you have to ask. So go ahead, Richard.
Okay, and I hope I'm not making people bored by just racing through this list like this. It's just like, you know, a whole bunch of data. I have no idea whether I'm putting everybody to sleep or, you know, if they are continuing to be interested. So
I think
I know you're watching the chat room, I guess.
Yeah, I will let you know. But I think you know, people have come onto this program because they want to hear about this subject. So I doubt anybody's bored at all. So
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Eleuthero root, that's kind of used as a substitute for ginseng sometimes. It's not quite as expensive, and sometimes it's more available. It's spelled E-L-E-U-T-H-E-R-O. And it, again, is called an adaptogen, which means it helps you fight stress and basically helps all the body systems. It's a great herb. Fo-ti is famous, F-O-T-I, called in Chinese He Shu Wu. And it's very famous for vitality to the point of sometimes restoring hair color and just general anti-aging herb. I've had great results with that. And I don't know if it's because of that, but I personally had an experience of reversing my hair color. It was almost completely gray, and there's almost no gray in it at all anymore. And, you know, that was, I think, probably at least partly due to Fo-ti, but also because of general dietary regimens and things like that. So all of the age reversal is completely possible This nonsense about the inevitability of falling apart and getting degenerative diseases and all that, it's completely untrue from what I've found and experienced. So don't believe any of that. And you don't know what your potential is unless you do everything you can and keep getting educated and applying whatever you learn, I would suggest. So
Someone,
anyway,
Richard, someone in the chat room said, "This is great info. Please continue." So
okay, good. I'm glad I'm not putting you all to sleep. I really hope not.
someone else said, "Very interesting." So this is what they're here for. They want this information.
Okay, and this is related to geoengineering, everybody should know, because if you don't know what your potential vitality, super energy level is in health, and you start wasting your time getting old, you're not going to be a very good fighter against geoengineering. So that's how it ties together.
Right.
The next thing on the list is garlic. And garlic's really famous. It's been used, way back to Egypt and a long time before that. It's got antibiotic qualities. It's got sulfur in it, which is important for a whole bunch of things. And by the way, I have to mention something about sulfur right now, just really quick. One of the things that is so critically important about direct exposure to sunlight on your skin, as often as you can get it, not, you don't burn yourself to death. You have to have common sense about this stuff, which has to come back to people after they've been trained out of it. But when your skin gets hit by sunlight, it's a super therapeutic effect. It's not some mistake of nature. And what the sunlight does when it hits your skin is it makes sulfates, which vitamin D, which are really important as a hormone for all the operations in your body. And if you use carcinogenic sunscreens to avoid that, and then you put dark glasses on, and you never get used to it, you're putting your body at a tremendous disadvantage. So the sources of sulfur are important, and one of them is garlic.
It's funny. One thing Laura and I talk about a lot, Richard, is that everything in the system seems to work against you.
Which you mean the system of the government-related system?
Yeah, the system that's been created for healthcare, for learning how the world works. It's just all the more you learn about it, the more you realize it's just been designed against your well-being.
Yeah, I mean, if you get your common sense back, you can see in a second what's going on. The power structure has, even in our country where they've put checks and balances in place, and the founders were really brilliant about attempting to do that, all of those have now been circumvented. And so the positions where people can get the most power to run everybody else's life have attracted the absolute worst people. And they're not stupid bad people. They're very clever and intelligent in an evil kind of way. And they're all in those positions now. And the government that we see is not the top. That's like the lower mid level. And it's being run by people above them with absolutely clear malevolent intent. And that's where the educational system, the healthcare system, the media, all these things came from. And we need to not be complete idiots and fall for the whole thing. And remember, even though it's late in the game, there are tools, and we got to learn about all of them immediately, use them on ourselves before we worry about talking to other people, and then use the vitality and clarity that comes out of that and put some power and intelligence into what we want to work for. So I see it tying together really well.
Yeah.
So anyway, going to the next alphabetical list here, and we're not getting very far, but ginger, which everyone's heard of, is a really good culinary herb, meaning you can use it in all kinds of food preparation, but it's also has very strong health qualities. It's a high source of magnesium, manganese, potassium, copper, and it's a good antioxidant. It's famous for use against nausea, morning sickness. It's been helpful in arthritis, inflammation, and other kinds of inflammations. Just really a beneficial thing to eat. And this is the way that I was kind of investigating what I could do to drop the supplements. Because when you find a source of magnesium, for example, and there's other higher sources later in this list, then it's way, way better than taking a magnesium pill. Because even the natural people have isolated magnesium and maybe one or two other things with it. Whereas in nature, it's probably got thousands of little tiny components that make it work right. And you can never duplicate that in a factory. So that was my reasoning for making this huge switch over to plants. Now, the next one that I have down here is gotu kola, which David Wolf likes this a lot. I'm not using it right now, but it's known to be a super brain food, nervous system health booster, alkalinizer, opens up the brain circulation. And I just watched a video where David was talking about it, and he said it was just after he started taking it, he just noticed an overwhelming difference in clarity and thinking. It's also anti-inflammatory, so really good herb. Then horsetail. Horsetail is really interesting because it's a super source of silica as well as other things. And there's a phenomenon that's a fascinating thing in nature called biological transmutation, which is the subject of a really worthwhile little paperback book called Biological Transmutation by Kervran, Kervran. I think his first name might be Lewis, but I'm not sure. You can still get it, I think, on Amazon. I read it like 30 years ago. And it means that in nature, there's evidence that's undeniable that one mineral is actually being changed into another mineral. And according to conventional chemistry, that is totally impossible. So the example here is that when silica has been supplied in abundance to people suffering with broken bones, the bones heal way faster, and the calcium seems to be coming from a place they can't even identify. So it looks like silica transmutes into calcium. Whereas if you took calcium pills, there's evidence that those are really harmful to health. But not so with silica, especially if you take a plant that's a natural source of the silica, which horsetail is. Oat straw is another one, the straw that is the dead grass from growing oats. Oat straw is a really good silica source too. And then maca. Maca is a root that looks kind of like a brown radish. And the thing about maca is it grows up in really high altitudes. I think it's the highest altitude growing plant in the whole world, even higher than grass can grow. And it grows in Peru, where they actually sell it as a fresh vegetable. And it's so powerful to be able to grow up there. It transfers that power to the people that eat it, which is the whole idea of the tonic herbs. And it's very high in trace minerals and fatty acids and amino acids and sulfur compounds, like we were talking about. It's been used to fight malignancies, and it's an adaptogen, like like ginseng and the other ones like that. So it helps fight stress. All these, if you take a bunch of these and you decide on which ones are right for you to take, which you really have to learn enough yourself to find out. Watch the YouTube videos on each one and read some of the books if you have time. Get the information. Listen to David Wolf's speeches, which are really inspiring. And again, he knows like 1,000 times more than I do about any of this stuff. And then when you find a bunch of herbs that you want to take every day, I just put them in salad because I only eat raw food. So I'll put them in the salad, mix them up with some water so that they're not dry, and then add everything else, whatever I'm using in the salad. And it works just fine. I eat them every day like that. Maca, I just talked about oat straw. Okay, reishi is one of David Wolf's absolute favorites. It's another one of these mushrooms that grows on the side of dead trees and absorbs the minerals that the tree has absorbed for its entire lifespan. Trees are great sources of minerals because many of them have roots that go down really deep, and then when they die, and these scavenger mushrooms like reishi and maca, and not maca, but chaga grow on them, those become the depositories of these super concentrated nutrients. So reishi is great, and it's good for the entire body and the immune system, all the different organs, and it concentrates some super unique elements from these trees.
Richard, I'd love to add something to that. Several things you mentioned I actually take, and one of them is reishi mushrooms and maitake mushrooms. I take those together.
Yeah, that's great.
And those are incredible immune stimulants.
Right.
And let me tell you something, and I mean that. I mean, I have offered this to many people for free, and I have had more people become believers in the power of herbs using those supplements than anything else that they've tried, with the possible exception of colloidal silver, which is also quite remarkable.
Yeah, that's fantastic also.
Yeah, but
I completely agree.
Yeah, but the reishi and maitake mushrooms, I mean, I can feel myself when they're spraying those biologics, and there'll be a heavy morning spraying, I wake up with a sore throat. Yeah. I will take those, and literally within just a few hours, it's gone. And I've experimented where if I don't take it, that
Mm.
that thing will just that sore throat will just linger on all day.
Yeah, so I would really if you're into supplements, which is a good idea because the food does not have enough to keep you healthy anymore. And I would advocate moving towards whole plant sources that are raw and organic and use those. And the power in those is just, it wipes out anything that you can get from a factory, no matter how good it is. Saw palmetto berries are really famous for prostate health, of all kinds of prostate problems, and they taste absolutely terrible. So what I do is I just use like a couple of pinches of that powder, which is real strong, in a salad, and mixed up with everything else. I don't taste it, but those are a very valuable thing to know about.
And so
Shazam,
people know, enlarged prostate is associated with mercury toxicity.
right, right. So
And,
you have to, you have to do a lot of things, everything you can find out about, one of which is detoxing your body. And that's a big subject, and it's absolutely indispensable if you want to be healthy. So
absolutely,
no matter how much nutrition you get, even in the best forms that we're talking about, it's not going to do nearly what it could if you leave toxic residues in your cells, which are there from eating things that you shouldn't, and breathing and drinking things that were bad from before you were born. So,
yeah. And I
you
know people
know,
who were beyond middle age people
yeah,
who were taking medications for enlarged prostate.
hmm,
And a friend of mine's father was in this situation, and she convinced her father to try saw palmetto, and he only took half of what we recommended.
yeah,
He never took his medication once again. It
yeah,
actually, half of what was recommended actually helped him more than his medication, and that was just
yeah.
saw palmetto.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do. It's really exciting. And once you start realizing it, now we have to be really careful. I want to I probably should have said this earlier, but I want to clarify that all of this is just a bunch of opinions and experiences from me. I'm not telling anybody what to do. And that's absolutely true. And I would say that even if we weren't degenerating into a police state. But the fact is that we are degenerating into a police state. And very soon it's going to be completely illegal to even talk about these things in America. So we're getting there now, and I want to be legally sound by just telling you these are just a bunch of opinions of mine, and please do your own research before you do anything.
Right. None of these are medical. This is not medical advice, and none of these are cures. These are
That's
just
right.
personal opinions and experiences. That's all.
Yeah, if you want something medical, please go to your doctor and get surgery and drugs and radiation,
Right.
because that's the best thing.
Okay.
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 Now, Schizandra berries are one of David Wolf's absolutely favorite things in the world. It restores energy, super mental clarity booster, fertility energy, stops energy loss that is leaking out through, kidneys that aren't functioning really well, things like that. I've heard just tremendous stories about Schizandra berries. I use them. I can't tell you in combination with everything else I'm taking exactly what they're doing, but David Wolf's an herbal master, and he says they're great. And the other guys I mentioned say the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Turmeric, which has curcumin in it, I think that's the right order to say it. Um, that's a culinary herb like ginger, but it also has super health qualities. And you can get that as a dried powder if that's the only way you can get it, and it's great. But if you happen to be near a natural food store that sells it fresh, which some of them do now, it looks like a tuber, like a kind of a sweet potato-like shape, but miniature, like about a few inches long, and it's bright orange inside. And you can cut a little bit of it into a salad, and I mean, it's very famous for anti chronic disease properties of all kinds, and being fighting free radicals, being good for your skin, stuff like that. And then the last thing I would mention is just a few of the superfoods. One of which is bee pollen, which I don't use honey because even though it's a fantastic natural food and has minerals and all this stuff, it has a very high free sugar content. And our health is not like the health of people a few thousand years ago. We're not that strong. The magnetic field of the earth is way lower. We have other things against us. And what I found, and it took me years of experimenting to figure this out, but the dried fruits that can release free sugar if you put them in water, honey, things like that, I had disastrous results from doing that. In fact, I lost some teeth. And when you lose teeth, you're losing bone as well. The teeth reflect the bones. So I don't use honey, even if it's beautiful and organic and raw, and I don't use dried fruit, even though I love both of them. I have a tremendous enjoyment of sugar, but bee pollen is not very sweet, and it's a tremendous health food. And then another one that David Wolf thinks is like maybe one of the best superfoods in the world is cacao, which is the origin of chocolate. And it's not like the processed chocolate that we have now because it's the bitter part. And then somebody figured out that if you mix that with a bunch of sugar, it has this really interesting bittersweet taste that people just love. And, it's almost an addiction. The cacao part is a super health food until you heat it. And it's just like many other foods. Once you cook it in any degree past about 115 Fahrenheit or so, a lot of the nutritional quality is destroyed and it becomes not a health product at all. And so there are people actually making, if you do eat a little bit of sweets, like a little bit of honey or something like that, there are people that are making organic, natural, raw chocolate, and they use cacao. And if you eat that, you have to be really, really watchful of the effects of the sugar in that. But I just use the cacao plain as a powder and put it in with everything else in the salad, and it ends up tasting fine, and I don't mind it at all. And it's just an incredible antioxidant, maybe one of the most powerful on the planet. It's a super mineral source, very, very high in vitamin C. It's the highest natural source of magnesium that we know of, and of chromium and iron, and those are actually in therapeutic type doses, which is almost unheard of in a plant without being concentrated. So it's an incredible food, and it's recommended for everybody. Do your research on that. It's a super brain food. It's known as a mood enhancing chemical like an endorphin, and that's why even when you cook it and mix it with sugar, it tends to make people really happy when they eat it. You can get that same effect without the sugar damage by eating the cacao.
Now, where can people get that, Richard?
Same sources I mentioned, Mountain Rose Herbs. They have it in a dried powder, and they also have dried organic cacao in almost every good natural food store now. So you can get it quicker that way, and it's more convenient. So I just tend to do that. A couple of quick things at the end here. Chlorella and spirulina are super sources of chlorophyll and several other vitamins and minerals, and very high protein, very high protein. And the thing about, at least I'm not sure about chlorella, but spirulina and other blue-green algae, of which spirulina seems to be one of the main powerful ones, they have a tendency to boost the body's own production of stem cells. And stem cells are really, really important. They're tremendous healing forces in the body. They are the cells that have the ability to differentiate into any other kind of cell, like a bone cell or a brain cell or whatever it is you need. There's a signal sent out into the blood when there's some kind of an accident or a problem somewhere in the body, and the stem cells can pick that up and go there. And when they get there, they can actually become that kind of cell. It's so valuable that, for a while doctors, and probably still are, were charging vast amounts of money to get injected with some stem cells. But it's way better to get your own stem cells that are already matched to your body, that are made in your bone marrow and other places like that. And spirulina and other blue-green algae can make your body production of stem cells just jump up.
And Richard, we discovered in our research that spirulina is one of the few foods that you can live on.
Yeah, I think you probably could live on it, but it would be a little bit tricky because, the system is used to using fiber and other stuff like that. And there's some other nutrients that are good to balance that with. If you had to, you'd probably survive a long time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that that's a great health program.
Right. No, I wouldn't. But in a survival situation, if that's
Yeah,
if
if that's
you
all
had
you had, you'd probably stay alive.
if you had spirulina on hand, it would be one of the best survival foods. It'd be certainly a lot better than grits, probably.
Oh yeah, exactly. And there's a whole other long discussion about which kind of foods that you eat as your basic food. This is all supplements.
Right.
So the supplements, to be the most value, have to go with a basic diet that is what the body's looking for. And most people are feeding their bodies food that they don't even know what to do with, and they just end up being stored as toxins. So if you care about the toxins in geoengineering, you should care about the ones that are directly already in your body and how to get those out and stop putting them in.
Absolutely, and I do want to remind everybody, we do have a couple calls, but we could take some more calls in just a minute. But please.
I'm almost done with the list. Too.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to get people lined up in the queue. If you want to go give Richard a call, or you want to call in and talk to Richard, ask him a couple questions, just go to globalskywatch.com/live and click on the upcoming meetings button, and the phone numbers are right there, or you can click on the U.S. and international phone numbers button. But you can see the number 559-726-1300. That's 559-726-1300, access code 156230, and then you can ask Richard some questions. So go ahead, Richard.
Okay, so I want to mention hemp seed because it's a super high protein food. It's available in most of the really good natural food stores as this kind of little green, grainy thing. And it has, just so if anybody wonders, it's not marijuana. It doesn't make you high. I'm not an advocate of marijuana at all. I don't think it should be illegal, and probably no drugs should be illegal. Just the manufacture of really poisonous ones like the pharmaceutical companies make. But marijuana, the reason I'm not in favor of it is that I think during this critical time when humanity is either going to live or die, that it's a really good idea for us to have super clear, high energy brains and bodies. And marijuana and things like that, I've seen for decades that they just end up fogging out people's perception and making them not care about what's going on. And I don't think that's what we need right now. But hemp seed is a completely different thing. The hemp crop actually was a major crop in early America. It's useful for all kinds of fiber production, but hemp seed is a super protein food, and it's a really good nutrient supplement.
It's another one of the foods that I take 5 days a week. I have that as part of my morning regimen. I have hemp protein.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, those are some of the basics, and as fast as I could go. So if there's any questions, maybe we can talk a little bit, or we can get into some, nutritional dietary issues or whatever you want to.
Well, we got some people waiting in the Q&A queue, so why don't we get to some questions?
Sure.
All right. Well, that's great. Yeah, let me go ahead and take our first question. Oh, welcome, caller. You're on.
Hey, Russ, Dan Rochester.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Great, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there.
Good. How are you, Richard?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Nice to hear your voice.
Good. Yeah, you too. Thanks. Great show as usual. Richard, I was curious about a couple things. I had two questions. First one pretty quick, probably. But
hey, Dan. One suggestion: you're probably a little close to your microphone. It's overdriving a little bit, so it's a little distorted. If you back off from the mic, I think it'll be a lot clearer.
Yeah, sorry about that. I remember you said it last week, so I just pulled it away.
Yeah, it's so much clearer when you pull it away. We can hear every word that way.
I just like people to hear me. That's all.
Hey, that's a lot.
Anyway, seriously, Richard, what is your view on borax?
Borax is a really interesting mineral. What exactly are you asking?
Well, I'm just curious about what your thoughts are of the health benefits and that kind of thing, because I take that in addition to so many other things, but I've had some pretty serious problems physically in my life, not the least of which was I had at a point for about 15 years I had ulcerative colitis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty dreadful what ends up happening to your body when you have an autoimmune disease like colitis,
mm-hmm.
or many others, right? And so anyway, one of the things that happened to me when I had colitis, you're anemic, so you're losing blood, you're losing nutrition, you've got inflammation, you got bacteria surging through your body, you're toxic as hell, and the bacteria unfortunately settles into your joints, mimics the inflammation of arthritis, so you tend not to move as much, so your tendons and ligaments and joints and things tend to seize up. And I went through a massive amount of hardening of the joints, especially around some pretty bad damage I had sustained in my back and my neck many years ago from an accident. So I was in pretty rough shape. Thankfully, I figured out how to cure my colitis, and I'm actually colitis free for a couple of years now, and I'm pretty excited about that. If you can, if, for a lack of a better way to put it, it's like getting your life back. But anyway, I started to take borax, I don't know, 6 months ago or whatever, and the pain, the relatively small amount of pain that I had after all these years has pretty much dissipated, and I know it has to do with borax. So I've read good and bad things about it. I'm very much in favor of borax, and I advocate it, and I'm just curious what your thoughts were.
You know, the only thing, I know very little about it. I've never experimented with it personally, but I think that borax has boron in it. And boron is a trace mineral. And it's a trace mineral. It's one of those that's essential to life. If you don't have enough, you've got all kinds of weaknesses happening and problems. And if you have too much, it's toxic. And so it might be that in your particular case, maybe because of being in an area where the soil's deficient in boron or something like that, that you had a situation where you needed an extra amount of it, and so it really helped you. But you just, with that kind of supplement mineral, you have to be really careful not to get too much of it as well. So that, you know, that's the main feeling I've got about it at the moment.
Dan, somebody on this chat room was saying, how do you take it?
Well, you know, you buy it in a box. 20 Mule Team is the name of the company or it's the name of the product or the company, whatever, 20 Mule Team. And it's just a powder, and you put like a teaspoon per, I think, quart, something like that. So, you know, in a gallon jug of water, you just put it into water. You put in like 3 or 4 regular teaspoons, you know, shake it up, and you drink it sparingly. You don't have to, you know, drink a whole lot of it, but you might, you know, drink a couple glasses a day or something like that. And that is actually a very trace amount. It's a very safe amount. And their websites, I've posted on your site, Russ, the instruction, whatever. I'd be glad to put that back up or whatever. But there are quite a few sites around that explain how much you should take. But Richard, just for an example of how this has helped me, last year of all things, and this was again related to this accident I had to have a hip replacement last year. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to do a I forget what they called it. It wasn't a full hip replacement. It was a procedure where they could grind down the bone, the ball on your hip, and then they could put a ceramic half ball and drill a hole into your bone and glue it in. And you know, if your bones and stuff were strong enough, they could do something like that as opposed to having to, you know, do the massive amount of bone removal that they have to do in a full hip replacement. As it turns out, I had osteopenia really bad in that area of that hip, so I was not able to get away with, you know, the partial procedure. I had to have the full-blown procedure. But anyway, I don't think there's any question. My bones, a lot of have just gotten so much stronger, and I've got so much more elasticity and that kind of thing. And I feel better every day, and I'm starting to eat a lot better, and I'm taking care of myself. But definitely the borax has helped a lot. And anyway, just one more quick question, if I could, Richard. You had mentioned about the movement that's going on across the planet, where people are trying to shut down the nutritional industry and that kind of thing. I remember reading a couple of years ago, whatever it was, that there was one particular guy who was out there, and you know, he's as far as I'm concerned, a raving lunatic. He was on a YouTube video or something, and he was talking about how nutrition didn't even actually exist, that humans didn't need nutrition, and it was pretty obvious that he was in this group of people who, you know, want to keep us completely deficient and devoid of any kind of capability of thought or movement or whatever. And just my question is, and you can cut me off here, Russ, appreciate the time. My question is, do you know who these people are? Do they tend to be sort of this shadow group that we picture the chemtrail groups are, and, you know, these other people who are doing all these things to us? Are they involved with that type of entity? Is it sort of like all the same people doing the vaccines and all this stuff to us? Or are there elements, do you think, of
Great, thank you,
Well,
Dan.
yeah, I can just give you my impression of that from my own study and investigation into it pretty deeply. And that is it. I see it at this point as kind of a pyramid power structure that's being directed from the top of the pyramid, which is very, very small numbers of individuals that don't have names that we would recognize. And they're above the levels that most of us are aware of. And they are the people that have the overview, and that overview includes the overview of the plan includes the chemtrails, it includes cutting off nutrition, it includes the fake healthcare system, it includes destroying the soil and the biosphere with GMOs, all of these different things that are working and cutting off the economic system. I mean, all the central banks that are gradually destroying the value of the currency, step by step on purpose. These are all under the control of the planners and directors that are operating from the very top. So I assume that Dan's not on the line anymore, but
Oh, he's listening.
okay, yeah, you're listening, Dan. I think that it's all absolutely, completely controlled. And for any of us to assume that these things are happening because our leaders are not intelligent is a big mistake. You know, this is absolutely, completely coordinated. I hope that answers what you were asking.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Richard. You know, for example, Dr. Boyd Haley did research that actually associated autism with mercury toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
And his colleagues were telling him, and I'm telling this story to demonstrate how this works. His colleagues were telling him, this is incredible, this is wonderful. They said, you're going to write your own check for all your grant money, you're set for life. They're going to set you up because this research you've done is tremendous. And guess what happened? They cut all his funding. The Institutes of Medicine, the National Institutes of Health, these organizations that are set up to actually give, they determine where this grant money goes. Who are the researchers who get this grant money? And so what they did is they actually publicly stated, they said, thank you very much for your research. And they actually publicly stated that we are no longer funding mercury-based research.
Right. Yeah, it's just like Dane, who I guess everybody on this call knows about, is in California, and he found out that they stopped testing for aluminum in the water samples in California.
Right.
That's one of the pollutants that they no longer think is important to test for.
Right. Okay, so we have all this aluminum showing up. For those people who don't understand what the implications are, we have aluminum being sprayed from these jets, showing up in soil, showing up in water samples, and now the states are being told don't test for aluminum anymore.
Yeah, it'd just be too embarrassing, and it would get in the way of the program, which is to totally make it impossible for normal plants to grow.
Yeah, it would expose what's going on. It would expose.
Yeah, it's not acceptable. So
yeah.
People don't understand that the media is a PR arm of the top cartel of corporations, and part of this overall agenda is detailing how they want the people of the world to think and what their beliefs should be. And in order to create those, a big part of what does that is the so-called news. And it has nothing to do with telling the truth about anything. I mean, that's not even relevant. It has to do with what do they want the resulting belief system about everything to be in the people, and that's what they put into the stories.
Yeah, and I can testify to one of the methods they use to marginalize real news is what they do. Since I stay up all night, I work at night and sleep during the early part of the day, which I know isn't healthy, but I can't. I have to because they spray hard at night. In fact, 15 minutes ago, we just got hit with our first hard plume of the night.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's my sinuses are swelling up and I've got a mild headache and my body is starting to ache, which is what I go through every night when they spray, and I have to take supplements to counteract that. Anyway, they spray at night. So being up all night allowed me to watch the news at night a lot of times. While I work, I would listen to news. And I don't listen to news to get information. I listen to news because I know how to listen to news, because I know how they twist information. And what I witnessed is that 4 o'clock in the morning, they would do 5 or 10 minutes of real good health information. I mean, they actually had really valuable health information at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I live in the Eastern time zone. At 9 o'clock in the morning, they tell you garbage. If you have diabetes, make sure you're drinking plenty of coffee and eating lots of chocolate. I'm not kidding you. Um, I for 5 days I kept track of the health news that the health advice that was being given by mainstream news at 9 o'clock in the morning, and all 5 days in a row it was laughable. It was absolutely counterproductive garbage. It would do more harm than good. But at 4 o'clock in the morning, for 5 minutes, they give you a little nugget of real information. And the reason they do this is because nobody's watching at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's a game. It's a game of numbers. Because in the future they can come back, and if they're accused of, oh, you never broadcast this information, they can go, no, we did. No, we're fair. We covered that. Yeah, you covered it at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you spread junk the rest of the day.
Yeah, the objective there is to make sure that the entire sphere of what the information we're exposed to is all completely self-destructive, so that we have no idea what's actually happening in any area, which all interconnect, and we just believe whatever it is they want us to think. And right now they have a big problem with that, because one of the general news productions that's on twice a day, every day for hours, is getting noticed all over the world, and they have about 25 million listeners and viewers a week. And this is Alex Jones. And I would say every single one of the people on your Facebook page, everybody who cares about getting any news before it's snuffed out entirely, needs to support Infowars.com and their television counterpart on the internet called prisonplanet.tv. And I really hope that everybody will take time to, and I'm not getting money, or they don't even know I'm talking about them, and they don't care, but I'd say, please support those guys, because his life is in danger right now, and that's just, it's unfortunately likely to disappear at any moment. That is a real hardcore super news and current events station, and they replay their stuff, so if you can't hear it at the right time, it doesn't matter. You'll learn about the TV and radio parts. Just go to Infowars.com. They've got written news. You'll see what real news is like, and it's shocking. It's totally different than what you see on television.
Yeah, and when you see what they're ignoring on television, you can see the control. We've got a few callers I want to get to, but real quick, I do want to say this, is that people who are new to this, who are just beginning to listen, it's hard sometimes to think that news is lying to you. I get that. It took me 2 years to really accept it, until one day I had seen enough lies, and I saw a huge lie that they told. They absolutely, something I personally had personal knowledge about, and they twisted it completely backwards, and for their own purposes. And I was finally, after 2 years, I finally said, wow, this is absolutely propaganda. It's absolute propaganda. But so I get it. It's hard. It's hard. But for those who first listen to this, who are just learning, and your eyes are being opened to how much corruption we're living under and how much conditioning we're living under, understand this. The people who are in powerful positions in the world are very intelligent people. And what they study is they study human behavior extensively. So they know you very, very well. They know what makes you tick. They know what drives you, what motivates you. They know about you, because in order to exert control and in order to sell products, both of those things require an intimate knowledge of human behavior. So what you have to understand is that the first thing that they do, if you own a large corporation, the first thing you want to do, if you really want to be successful in your sales, is you want to own a chunk of mass media, because then you'll be able to throw news stories in the series that are on television. You'll be able to write Windows or Dell or Apple on the back of the computers, which you see all the time. I watch a little bit of TV every night, because I love looking for this stuff. I mean, I just love seeing all of the, I don't love it in a way that I like to see it, but I love being awake so that I can see all of the messages, all of the propaganda, every single show I've ever watched, not every single episode, but every show that I've ever seen has propaganda written into it. And if you understand how the world works, you'll see that. So these very intelligent people understand, not only do they have to understand human behavior, but they also want to own a chunk of media. Because can you imagine the power? Right now, we go on Facebook and we try to communicate with 50 people at a time or 100 people at a time. Imagine if you had a bullhorn and you could communicate with 3 or 4 million people at once in just a few seconds. Imagine the power of telling them. You could direct people to your store, direct people to your products, and you could eventually over time develop very subtle ways of doing it, writing it into scripts of shows, and that's exactly what they do. Of course, in addition to the conditioning to try to build your worldview, that the way that helps you to be a good little consumer and to believe the mainstream lies that you're being told, or the mainstream lies about health or other subjects that they also lied to you about.
Right. One of the biggest fears of the people who are doing that is that all of us will eventually find out, or anytime find out, that we are not powerless, that we have amazing abilities, that even if we don't look like Superman or Superwoman, we're basically internally superheroes with abilities in life that we can't even imagine right now. So, because that's true, and that's their biggest fear, that means that's our biggest opportunity. And health is not just some, academic issue. It's one of several things that you need to just absorb ravenously in your own education and get back what you used to be, because, what you've never experienced in this lifetime, but what we have the capability of being, we got to get that back and use it, or else we don't have much of a chance.
All right, let's take our next caller. Caller, you're on. Welcome.
Hello. You've mentioned a little bit about the importance of sun exposure, and you talked about the carcinogens in sunscreen, but I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on your feelings about using sunscreen.
Yeah, it's a great subject, and probably one that's going to take a little more than the time we've got left, but I'll say a few quick things about it. And by the way, one of David Wolf's other friends named Nadine Artemis, Artemis, I think, has a site where she sells natural body products, alternatives to the carcinogenic sunscreens. And she just gave an incredible speech at one of David's workshops on this whole question you just asked. If you find out, maybe it's on video somewhere on YouTube or something, it would be fantastic to see that thing again, because she's brilliant. But anyway, just to give you a short answer, in my opinion, God did not make a big mistake creating the sun. That it is actually the source of life on this planet, on a physical level anyway. And it makes the plants grow, and we're designed very, very sophisticated and beautiful creature, like we're not a mistake and just the plants are beautiful. We have just incredible things built into our system. And one of them is that our skin is designed to take nutrition of several kinds directly from sunlight, just like plants are. We don't have chlorophyll, but we have other ways of using it, and we create vitamin D sulfate and things that go into our whole body like a hormone and affect every part of it. So if we cut off our normal exposure to the sunlight, then we can't get complete nutrition. Even if you take a vitamin D pill, and vitamin D3 is the only really good form of that, by the way, it's nothing like sunlight. And so when you put sunscreen on, it gets in the way of the nutrition that you're supposed to get from the sun. It blocks part of it, and there are ingredients put in it that are, one in particular, I wrote it down here somewhere. Maybe I'll find it. Anyway, it's a long chemical name, and it was chosen because it's not carcinogenic. It only becomes cancer-causing when the sun hits it. And that's one of the major ingredients in most of the sunscreens that are produced and sold as safe to everybody, to save you from the sun. So, in my opinion, and also they found out that the people who are getting the most skin cancer are those who work indoors and live farthest from the equator, and often on parts of their body that never get hit by the sun at all. So I think the reason that sun seems to trigger skin cancer, and this is just my opinion, I can't say anything about anything and tell you anything to do, and you guys understand that, but my opinion and the way it looks to me is that the sun wakes up your skin, and in addition to supplying it with desperately needed energy, it also triggers it to start eliminating toxins in your body, both the toxins from the sunscreen that you're putting on it and the toxins from everything bad in the food that's been eaten since the beginning of your life or before in your mother's bloodstream. And when the skin is the biggest elimination organ that you have, and every pore works like that. So when the pores are filled with this super concentrated stored up toxins that are trying to get out, and the sun hits that and it bakes into the skin, especially when it's added to sunscreen, I think that can cause problems. So one thing that I've noticed, because I've been working on detoxification and cleansing for, I mean, more than 40 years, and I've noticed that the way that your skin responds to sun when your body's clean, for one thing, there's no bad smell that comes out of your body at all. That's completely abnormal. So you don't need deodorant type stuff at all anymore. And that has carcinogenic ingredients in it as well, which the people at the top know. So anyway, as your body gets cleaner, it can respond to the sun in a natural way, and it gets really hard to burn it, which I think is interesting. And you can spend much more time comfortably in the sun with no problem. And if you want to be able to get to doing that, it has to be approached in a holistic manner where you're getting all the nutrition that you need in the right form and taking the built-up toxins from decades and decades out of your cells and letting them respond to the sun like they were designed to. So that's a little bit about what you're saying. I hope I'm talking about what you're asking.
Well, yes, and you know, one thing they've talked about with chemtrails is that the chemtrails deplete the ozone layer, and that makes the sun even more, I guess, powerful and, well, they want us to think dangerous, you know, but
yeah, it's definitely true that it gets stronger when it's not filtered like that. But I mean, I'm in the southern desert. I'm lying in it every day at noon with no problem at all. So I think that although you have to be more careful when it gets more intense like that, it's not what they're telling you. But you can't just say, well, you guys are lying and I'm going to go out and get 6 hours of hot sun exposure with no preparation because it's going to burn you. And if you burn up your skin, it hurts your skin. I mean, you can't do that. So if you want to get some exposure to sun and get the benefit from it, in addition to simultaneously working on cleaning up what you're eating and drinking, that's critically important because they're connected together and cannot be separated. While you're working on that, you can start very, very gradually getting some sun exposure and keep your skin hydrated by doing something like putting some raw virgin coconut oil on it, which is great for your skin. I use it every day. And you can use it after a shower. It's good for your face. It's good for everything. And it has no downside and no chemicals and no poisons in it. And I use that so that when I'm in the sun, really hot sun, my skin doesn't get dried up or wrinkled up or lose moisture or anything like that. I think that's a really good idea to do.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, play with that.
All right. Yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks, Michelle. All right, we have another question. Caller, you're on.
Hello. Thanks for an excellent program. Very good information, Richard.
Thank you. Glad you're interested.
Is the three masters that you mentioned at the beginning of your talk, could you spell the names for them? There was David Wolf.
Yeah, these are herbal masters, and in the case of David and to some degree the other guys, they know a lot about nutrition, but especially David in the general nutrition area, I would say for sure. And David Wolf is David in a normal spelling, and Wolf is Wolfe with an E at the end. And then the second name was Truth Calkins, which the first name is Truth, like the word truth. And his last name is Calkins, C-A-L like Larry, K like King, I-N-S. Truth, he's a really interesting speaker, and there's a lot of his stuff for free on YouTube. And then Ron Teagarden is an older herbal master that's got this incredible depth of understanding. He's connected to an old Taoist master from China, I think. And that's Ron, like a normal spelling, R-O-N, and then Teagarden is spelled T like Tom, E-E, G like George, U-A-R, D like David, E-N. And those guys are definitely worth learning from, especially in the herbal area. They have just vast knowledge, and it's enjoyable to soak up as much as you can.
Good, I want to definitely look that up. And the other thing, I wondered what your feeling is, you know, in trying to eat organic and have these herbs and things to be clean with all the dumping of the chemtrails and the poison toxifying our soils. what are your thoughts on trying to grow something? Are we going to be able to do that in our soil? Is there some way to clean that out, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, there's two parts of that question. One is about the herbs that you buy, and the other one is the ones that you might be able to grow and your general ability to grow food. And of course, we're not in a perfect environment thanks to our people who are dumping all this poison on us from all directions, but it's better to try to grow it and to get it from good sources than to take the junk in the grocery store. So you just do the best you can do. And Mountain Roads Herbs tests their herbal sources for heavy metals and all kinds of contaminants that are rampant in China, where they get a lot of them. And I've been really impressed with their conscientiousness. I think they're one of the better sources. Any source that you decide to use for dried powdered herbs, you want to question them about that and find out what they're doing. But I like what Mountain Rose has adopted for that. It's probably the best that we can do at the moment. And as far as what you grow, which I think it's absolutely important for people to grow food as much as they possibly can right now, because in America we're approaching a financial crisis which is way beyond what we can imagine. And it's going to be really hard to get food unless a lot more of us are growing it. So what you want to do in addition to normal organic methods is you want to learn about using rock dust, because the rocks have what they call paramagnetic properties, and they can actually replace some of the bad chemicals and minerals that you get from chemtrails, and put the good ones in first into the plants. And if you give the soil bacteria and the fungi and things that help the plants that are in healthy soil, you give them enough minerals in very, very finely ground rock dust with a wide diversity of minerals in it, you can actually fight back against some of this pollution from the chemtrails. So I would highly recommend that.
So you add that to your soils, or do you just grow the plants in completely the rock dust?
No, the rock dust is just one part of healthy soil. And it's the part that's missing right now with the really low mineral content of most soils. So you still want to use, organic mulches and things that are as clean as possible to break down into the soil so that the earthworms can drag them down into the deep soil and make it rich. And, ideally you want it really soft and high organic matter. But that's not sufficient without the rock minerals. And the rock dust is the only real source of that on the planet. So finding a place where they process rock, especially like river gravel, is great because it has a wide diversity of minerals in it, not just one. And if they're grinding it for anything, usually they'll end up with piles of very, very fine residue from their grinding jobs, and it's available fairly cheaply wherever you can find these quarries, rock processing plants, places like that. You might have to investigate a little bit, but all parts of the country have those, and people don't realize that their waste product, which is the powder from their grinding process, is super fertilizer. So you don't use it by itself. You still need the organic matter and the things that can be broken down by the bacteria that will give you nice soft soil. But you want this stuff in there too, and that's where you balance it and where you can fight back to some degree against the pollution from the chemtrails.
Yeah.
It also tends to stabilize the pH.
Yeah, one thing that it's amazing, when I first started talking to Richard, he's the first person I ever met who knew about rock dust, because when Laura and I began gardening 3 years ago, we did tons of research. I mean, we researched for many days before we even lifted a finger. We wanted to learn everything we could learn and figure out what everybody else's mistakes were so we didn't have to waste time making it. And we learned about rock dust during our research, and I've never met anyone else who knows about it, yet there are some very, very cutting edge growers, organic growers, who had begun using them and had great luck with it. And the fruit has much more vibrant taste. It lasts longer. The plants are healthier. And so what we did is we followed a plan where we bought rock dust from two companies that actually sell the dust. I mean, so we got two varieties. We wanted a bit of a variety. So we got two big, like 50-pound bags. And then when we were turning the soil, we would throw handfuls of rock dust in there. And then we also used, the word's escaping me, the compost tea.
tea.
Yeah, we would actually run oxygen from a fish pump through a liquid compost mixture overnight for about 24 hours, and it would give the organisms a chance to grow and flourish, and then we would actually spray even the leaves all the way down into the soil with this compost tea. And the microorganisms are essential to help to break down the minerals in the soil and let the plants use those. And we had just a tremendous success. And lo and behold, our tomatoes were like apples. You could eat them. They were just so delicious. And
one of the other things I want to mention in addition to rock dust is that you'll notice in nature, which is the real teacher that all of us have to really learn to observe very minutely, and also on a big scale, in the forest where you have incredibly luxuriant growth in places, you don't see too many people in there digging the soil all the time. It just works well by itself. And there's a fascinating video that everybody interested in gardening should watch, or interested in food growing, because they're showing a way to mimic what the forest does and still produce tremendous abundance from the garden. And if they were, I've talked to the person who made this video. He's really a great person. It's in a very religious point of view, so don't worry about that if that's not your belief system. It's irrelevant. It's what he's doing with the soil is incredible, and it's called Back to Eden. And you can see it for free on YouTube. Just put in the name. He's in Washington State somewhere. And my thought after talking to him is that if he would combine that with putting some additional rock dust under the mulch that he uses, he'd get results that are even many times better than what he's getting with his super mulching system that eliminates digging. So really interesting stuff, and I recommend watching that movie.
you still there?
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thanks so much. Thanks for calling. All right. Let's take our next call now. Welcome, caller. You're on.
Hi. Hi, Rob.
Hi there.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Stop here. I've got so many things on my mind. We've been getting hammered here in South Carolina, just hammered. And the gardening question already addressed. And a guy a while back, I can't remember his name, was talking about the information, the propaganda. You were talking about it too. And I've noticed that I listen to the archive on alternative media most of the time. And I have a phone that I can listen to in my car with this little speaker, and they have not been updated in 3 weeks, and I'm talking every station I listen to. And I'm wondering, have they already started this real cycle of warfare, and we're only going to get to listen to, or what they want us to hear?
Okay, so you're wondering if they're censoring already. Unfortunately, your audio was fading in and out while you were talking, but I think Richard heard what you were asking.
I'm not real sure, Russ. You tell me, just so that I'm clear.
She listens to news archives a lot on the internet using her phone, little speaker thing that she has. And she's noticing that a lot of the news sources have not updated their archives for the last 3 weeks, and that's she's wondering if maybe there's some sort of censorship that's already begun to occur with some of these new alternative news sources.
Okay, well, I'm not sure which alternative news sources we're talking about, but I would say anything connected to that's controlled in some way directly or indirectly by the main system. If they are censoring, they've been censoring since they were bought out by those guys shortly after the Federal Reserve was created. So you're probably not missing anything that they have that's great to offer. Again, I would say, find out about really the few remaining good news sources. There's one called Natural News that puts out a newsletter every day. It's free, and it's run by a friend of mine named Mike Adams. I think everybody should subscribe to that immediately. That's absolutely real news. Everybody should listen to Alex Jones on prisonplanet.tv if they're brave enough to hear what's actually going on. There's a few others that are really good, but they're stamping them out as fast as they can. And as far as most of the ones that you would hear on the radio, with rare exceptions, most everything you hear is twisted, whether it's current or archived. So it's pretty serious situation with information at the moment.
Yeah, what kind of stations were you not seeing the archives updated with?
Okay, I wasn't seeing, oh geez, American Freedom Radio, Orion Radio, whatever pop I moved to, I can't even think of what that is. The one that Jack Blood moved to. Are these guys bought out? They don't sound like they are.
You know, it's really hard to say, because one of the strategies of the big corporations that are from the system do when they come in, such as Monsanto, for example, with the GMOs, is they buy all the mom and pop nurseries that have been selling heirloom seeds for 100 years, and they leave the name the same. So I don't really know, which ones are bought out or not bought out, but you can pretty much tell by what they say is in the news, because if they're independent and they're aware of what's going on, what they're going to be reporting is incredibly shocking. And if it is, there's a good chance they're probably independent. And as far as whether those guys are censoring, they can't do the kind of censoring you're talking about unless they're bought out. So I don't know how far that's gotten. It's hard to tell.
Well, I know that I go back and forth because I check out the mainstream to see what they're reporting, and then I go back and I never hear any of this on mainstream, and it's very shocking.
Yeah.
It's very shocking. And so, and of course, I go to YouTube and watch some things, but even those aren't real current, except for maybe Alan Jones. And
yeah, I would love for there to be 100 different ones. I don't care about, being devoted to Alex Jones in particular. It's just that I don't see any other big internet station being absolutely honest, and I'm just amazed that he's still going. He knows that his life is in danger, but I would like to see everybody else starting. In fact, he tells other people, start radio stations, do anything you can. Don't let this, free information die. And people are trying. So
they really are, and I will do what I can. And I thank you so much. I've written down a lot of things, and this is the first time I've remembered on Monday night to get on there, because I just got a Steiner alert DVD in the mail. Didn't even know it was coming, with Dane Wigington and Michael Murphy and Scott Stevens and Cliff Carnicorn and all of these people. And like Russ, I'm not as ill as I've been, but I've lost my voice. I can't sing anymore. I'm always sound like I have a cold or I'm congested, and you can hear it in my throat, I'm sure. I think I've dropped about 5 octaves in my voice, and it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, do what you can with nutrition, because, we haven't figured out, obviously, how to stop the chemtrails yet. But in the meantime, we have to be careful not to feel like we're just, that there's nothing we can do, because the more you put super sources of nutrition into your body and learn how to clean out the poisons once they're inside, you can really make a huge difference. It doesn't have to hurt you as much.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to continue doing what I can. I'm a little worried about our earth and nature. I mean, I am surrounded by trees, and all of my trees are dead or dying. And I'm talking, trees that are hundreds of years old. And they're rotting from the inside out.
Right. According to the system, you're not supposed to notice those kind of things. But the truth is that, the whole planet is hanging by a thread in many, many directions right now. And since that's the situation we're in, whether we win or lose, let's get really, really strong and do the absolute best we can. and be the superhero in your own movie that you would like to see, instead of the one that gives up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to keep fighting, and in a peaceful way, but fighting.
Right.
Because this crap has to stop. It's just nuts.
Yeah, you can make a huge difference. Get yourself in as good condition as you can, and even if you don't say anything, you will incredibly affect other people by your example.
I will do that. And Richard, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, and it's just really a pleasure interacting with such a great audience. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, it is a great audience. And thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, good to hear from you. All right, thanks for calling. That's wonderful. We have one more caller we'll take. Go ahead, caller. You're on.
Hi, Russ. It's Lynn in Maryland.
Hi there.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you, Richard. I love listening to y'all, and I appreciate your Saturday radio program as well. And thank you for sharing about David Wolf. I used to be pretty healthy, and I've actually met him at a couple World Food events years ago. So one of the problems I have is, and I can't wait to listen to this archive and take some better notes, because I have brain damage from solvent and pesticide exposure. So doing things that involve more than one step is like really challenging, and I used to be organized. So it makes eating healthy a real challenge. And what I'm wondering, though, I had two questions, and one you may have already answered, and I may just have missed it somehow. But the first one is if you have any recommendations for storable food. I've checked out some of the sites, and, the ones that do list ingredients, they don't seem real healthy. And the other is if you have a green powder that you recommend, because if everything did hit the fan, and especially if things weren't growing well, it'd probably be good to have a source of a green powder on hand. So with that, I will pass, and I've really, really, really appreciated tonight's show. So thank you both very much.
Oh, great. Thank you for calling. Two great questions.
Yeah, I would say, as far as the storable food goes, personally, I like fresh raw food, and none of that is storable. But if you have to eat stored food, I think the best one that I've seen so far that's organic and as fresh as possible is sold by Mike Adams on Natural News. So at his store, he sells a lot of good things there, and he checks each one personally, and he knows what he's looking for. He's a health expert, and he's a great person. So I would recommend that everybody start subscribing to naturalnews.com immediately. It's free. It's a super wonderful movement that's going on in the world. It's dealing with all the same issues that we're talking about. Mike has just done amazing work for one person to put together this huge organization that he's done, and exposing things all over the place, and selling superfoods, I think storable organic foods, which is about the only place I've seen it. So go to naturalnews.com, find out where to sign up for his free email every day, and then go to his store, which you'll have to find out what the exact site is, but it's connected to naturalnews.com. You'll see it on there somewhere, and look at the storable food that he sells. It's probably about the best you can get, but I would suggest that grow whatever you can, even if you have to grow some indoors, on good soil sprouts or whatever you can, so that it's not just old stuff that you're eating, even if it's organic. The fresh has a life force that you cannot duplicate anywhere else that I know of, and especially if it's raw. And you can grow sprouts, you can grow greens, you can, even if you have a little place outside, you can do something in containers, or if you have more, you can grow a garden. And as far as the damage to brain functions and things like that, get your resolve and your intent very strong, and forget your limitations, and figure that you're going to rebuild as much of your physical body and your brain as you can possibly do, and learn about, like I said, about spirulina, increasing your own stem cells. My understanding is that stem cells can become any other kind of cell in the body, and if you need more brain function and things like that, I would really use the spirulina, and that ties in with your last question, which is about a green powder. And there are many organic dried greens combinations for sale all over the internet. But I still like the pure ones, which are spirulina and chlorella, which are two forms of algae that are super powerful and will, raise function as much as possible. And then you learn how to stop eating anything that has an ingredient in it that's going to poison you. Just learning how to stop that is a tremendous step forward in health. And what foods are being promoted as normal, something like 80% of the food in the average grocery store is GMO ingredients, and that's even worse than chemical agriculture. And it's proven to create organ damage and sterility and cancer and all these things in animals, and they still sell it, which is amazing, unless you understand what's going on. And so there's only a few things in the store that are really, in my opinion, edible. You have to learn about that, stop eating the ones that aren't. That's a tremendous first step, and then go towards organic food and towards raw food as much as you possibly can. Grow something or get connected with somebody who's growing organic food if you can, and learn about the sun, exercise, positive, constructive, emotional, and mental patterns. Put it all together. Even if the air is poisoned, do good breathing exercises, yoga, the other kinds of exercise. Do everything you can, and you'll find that what you thought were your limitations were completely imaginary, and you can go a lot farther than what you think you can, and a lot can be done in your life. So I would encourage everybody to do that.
One of the things that I also will mention for the new people, everybody else has heard me say this, but I use a wet mask. It's a painter's mask from Home Depot, and I use it to hold 2 wet washcloths over my face that are folded in quarters. I use a few drops of cinnamon and or peppermint oil inside the cloths, and I dampen those with water, and they actually, because I can smell and taste chemtrails, I have found that they significantly decrease the amount of toxin that makes its way through. Having tested many commercially available HEPA filters for the home, none of them work except the ones that use water, and they only work a little bit. They help a little bit, but even the best HEPA filter-based, carbon-based, ionizing-based air filters that I've tested remove smoke, they remove pollen, they remove odors. They do a tremendous job with those things, but what's left in the air is that pure smell and taste of the aerosols, the chemical aerosols that come from geoengineering. So using a wet mask can be a big help for that. We are at the end of our program for tonight. I want to give Richard a chance to make one last statement, what he wants to say to all of you, and then we're going to open up all the lines and let the stream roll so everybody can go ahead and chat afterward. I do want to remind everybody that we do have end geoengineering signs, yard signs and bumper stickers at globalskywatch.com. Just go to the home page and then scroll down a little bit, and please, we've got to get the word out to the public about what is going on in the skies. And the public has come to a point now. They've been watching you who are the more hardcore people who listen to this program, who are the people who have educated yourself and been brave. The public has been watching you, and the public has now changed their attitude over the last 12 months to the point where the protesters about geoengineering are getting very positive feedback when they go out into the streets and they teach people and they hand out flyers. These are family-loving people. These are people just like you and me who simply care about what's going on and recognize how insane it is and want it to stop. And the attitude and the feedback that they're getting back from the public has been very positive. Whereas in the beginning it was mixed and there was quite a bit of negativity, it's completely changed. There's been a big shift in the way people are viewing the world, and you are having an effect. So I appreciate everybody's work and everything that everybody is doing, and we have to continue reaching out to the public. So find the tools that help you to do that, and I try to make them available to you from Global Skywatch's website, so that you can have what you need. If you have suggestions for new things that will help you, let me know, and we'll try to make it happen. After this program is over, I will leave the phone lines open and the live stream running so everybody can continue to chat. And usually this chat goes on for hours, which is fine and great. Everybody loves to talk to everyone else and see what's going on. But I do want to invite everybody to join us again every Monday night at 8:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 12:30 a.m. London Time, globalskywatch.com/live. We also have a large repository of archived shows from everybody from Dane Wigington to William Thomas to Clifford Carnicom to George Barnes, who is the developer of Skyder Alert, to many, many other people who I really encourage you to listen to and learn about what's really going on, and find video or audio clips and programs that will work and help wake up your friends and family. So last word, Richard, what would you like to share with everyone tonight?
I think if I was just going to say one thing, or maybe two quick things at the end as one. First of all, I'd like to really encourage everybody, which we've been doing, just become voracious for your own education and your own improvement in any way that you can. Learn how to change your daily habits to bring yourself to your potential and find out what that is, because you're an incredibly brilliant person with just unbelievable abilities. So learn how to bring those out. And if you put a lot of focus on what you're going to do to yourself to raise your own level of abilities and awareness and consciousness, even if you never say anything, the impact that you will have on other people that encounter you and on the world will be beyond what you can imagine. And I would say, as one part of being able to do that, with the self-improvement focus, remember what it is. This is easy to forget, what it is that we're working for and fighting for and doing all these things to wake up the public and all that, is that a lot of great teachers have said everything boils down to either fear or love. No matter how complicated it might be, no matter what subject it is, whether it's chemtrails, gardening, GMOs, anything, the side that's all motivated by fear is trying to bring destruction in every part of our lives. We're fighting for beauty and for love and for the most beautiful things that we can imagine. And the minute we let those slip out of our awareness and our memory and our consciousness, and we just get into fighting for its own sake, we lost. So hold on to that, the most beautiful vision that you can. Keep trying to upgrade it, and that will infiltrate into everything you do. And that power is way more than anything that the bad guys could dream of. So that's what I would suggest.
Great. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate you being here tonight. You've shared a lot of tremendously great information. This information will be archived at globalskywatch.com/live. This program will also be uploaded to our Global Skywatch YouTube account, and that will be available later tonight. So please listen there too and share it with your friends. Take notes on all the supplements, the superfoods, and the tonic herbs that Richard mentioned, and we'll probably have to do some more shows in the future that get not only deeper into the health subject, but also into the what in the world is going on power structure. Richard and I have had long conversations about how this stuff is really working, and have probably a lot of insight to share on this subject. And a lot of people really want to.
Russell, you're just there. The sound just disappeared.
Oh, yep, I'm still here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, well that's all right. I guess we lost Richard at the last moment, but timing is good because he got all this information in. Have a good night. Please join us each week at globalskywatch.com/live. Saturdays, I co-host with Richard Sachs and Dane Wigington on Geoengineering Watch Radio, which you can see on ucytv.com. I'm sorry, ucy.tv, or you can go to globalskywatch.com/GWR for Geoengineering Watch Radio, and you can see all the archives there, or you can link right to the show. Click and get right to the live show. This is on Saturdays, 12 noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Dane Wigington, Richard Sachs, and myself are there every Saturday. So please join us. We'll have another guest next week. Please keep fighting the largest crime against humanity in human history. We are all facing it right now. We are two groups trying to educate the majority to our understanding of what's going on in the world. We're trying to wake up the majority so that we will have the political clout and the strength that we need to get the laws changed and to change and put an end to geoengineering once and for all. so that all the suffering, all the dying plants and animals, all of this can stop and we can return to some sort of sanity. This is very real. It is absolutely real. And from someone who can taste and smell the chemicals and the metals in the air, I testify to you, I tell you the truth, that it is absolutely real. For me, someone who is very sensitive in my sense of taste and smell, it is overwhelming. So we will continue to broadcast about this subject. We will continue to try to educate the public. And I ask that you use the archives of this radio program or to go to Global Skywatch's Global Skywatch's YouTube account and share any of the videos and any of the materials you see there, or the Global Skywatch website. We have a lot of reference material there that you can also use to help wake up the public and to reach out to new people, like bumper stickers, yard signs, and coming soon shirts and window stickies if you want them. So please have a great week. Keep up the good work and stick around for the after talk session, which is coming up in about 20 seconds. Good night.